الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب.
There was a professor that came to our university in Medina and a few years back, and he travels all over Saudi Arabia. So he narrated a very inspiring story that I never forgot. And in fact, I made sure that I heard it very carefully. Yeah, heard it very, very carefully. Whatever the case, what he said is that when he was going to one of the cities in Saudi Arabia to deliver a lecture, the person who would come and collect him from the airport, he said, is the man who's in charge of generally like most of the Quran complexes in the area. Like he is a person who's in charge. He has some honor, a high caliber in that community. So he said that. So the person picked me up. We entered into his car and we went past some big complex. So he says, ya doctor. He says, oh doctor. He said, this is my university. So he said, oh okay. Khair inshallah. And he said, we continued. After some time, we went past it again. We went past that same place, the complex again. So he said that. Ya doctor. He said, oh doctor. He said, that's my university. So then the Sheikh, he said that. He looked at it and he said, that's a prison. He said, what is it that you do in there? Exactly. Was your teacher there? You was a cleric? What did you used to do? So he said, then he started to narrate his story. He said, well basically, for 17 years, I was a highway robber. Meaning he used to kill people. So he said, the authorities were after me for 17 years. Eventually, they caught me. When they caught me, then what happened was that the judges wanted to carry out capital punishment. Because obviously, they do that in Saudi Arabia. But the evidence was insufficient. So what happened? He said that, so they gave me 6 years. And 3,000 lashes. 3,000 lashes. So he said, so I entered into my cell. Very miserable. Very sad. My cellmate says to me, so what happened? He says, well, 6 years, 3,000 lashes. He says, how about 3 years? So he says to his cellmate, he said, what are you? The Wazir al-Dakhili? Are you like the interior minister? You the Malik? Are you the king? That you're the one who decides this type of stuff? You're in the cell with me, my friend. And you're telling me? So he says, look, do you want 3 years or do you want 6 years? We said, well, 3 years is better than 6 at the end of the day. So he said, okay then, what you need to do is you need to memorize the Quran. Because over there, if you memorize the Quran, you do half your time. So he said that, memorize the Quran. He said, I don't even know about this type of stuff. So he picked up the Quran, which was in the cell, and he looked at it, he said, 600 pages. Of course. No way. He said that he's not even going to attempt it. So the person, his cellmate, spoke to him. He said that, you are a genius. You killed an entire nation, and they've been after you and they couldn't catch you, and you're telling me you can't memorize the Quran? Of course you can memorize the Quran. Your memory and your intelligence, your IQ level is like this. So he said, okay, so I started. And then he thought of something. He said, I don't even pray salah. He said, look, when you go there, they're going to say, Sammi'. What are they going to say? Recite. What you've memorized. They're not going to say, do you pray the prayer or not? Do you perform the prayer? He said, okay, fair enough. He said, okay, so he started. So he started memorizing the Quran slowly. After he memorized approximately 7 to 8 chapters of the Quran, he said, then after I saw how Allah destroyed this nation was perished due to this, and the different forms of azab that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down on different types of nations, he said, it developed a khawf, a type of fear in my heart, and my heart opened up. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me. He said, I started performing the prayer. After some time, I continued memorizing the Quran, and my heart opened up further, and I started to perform the night prayer. After some time, my heart opened up further, I started to fast regularly. He said, until he started to fast every other day, like Monday, then Wednesday, then Friday, then Sunday, etc. He said that after 2.5 years, he'd finished the Quran. So they told him, get out, you've done your time. So he said, yeah, he said, I don't really like the prison service here. He goes, you know, force me in here, now you're forcing me out too. So he said, they said, look, leave. So he left. After that, he went to his local area and he went to another city, went to Medina, and he learnt the Quran, meaning he had recited the Quran to a person who has an ijazah and a sanad, a chain going back to the Prophet ﷺ. So he had obtained that. After that, slowly he started moving himself up until he was in charge of one of the biggest masjids in that area. After some time, they really liked him, and they said that we find that this is a bit too much for you. Meaning you in charge of, you're the person, you're the khatib, you're the one who delivers the sermon, gives the talks, in charge of all the Quranic circles, you're the imam. This is too much for you. How about we find you a helper, a supporter? So he said, no problem. He said, we'll send him at either Maghrib or Isha time, and you test him, see if you're happy with him or not. So he said that. So he came and he looked up and he said, and it was the judge that wanted to carry out capital punishment on him. Yeah? Who now is becoming his deputy. And he said, so I started to cry, and I cried. Because he's really shocked. He said a year later, what happened was that he was in charge of this big circle. And so people would come to him to recite to him. So he said, one person came to me one day and he said, Ya Sheikh, oh Sheikh, would you give me permission to recite to you? So I looked up, and it was the second judge wanted to carry out capital punishment. Look at this, my dear respected brothers and sisters. How a person takes a complete U-turn. That this person is in the depths of darkness one day, and a few years later, just a few years later, now he's become a beacon of light, and people want to actually, becoming his deputy, want to read to him. Whereas once upon a time, they wanted him to depart from this life.
ألم يأن للذين آمنوا أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق ولا يكونوا كالذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبل فطال عليهم الأمد فقست قلوبهم وكثير منهم فاسقون